Robert Delaunay. B. Paris, 1885, D. Montpellier, 1941. One of the first purely abstract painters in Europe, Robert Delaunay developed the style that the poet Guillaume Apollinaire, below, dubbed Orphism, which was a personal interpretation of many of the elements of Cubism. After his parents' divorce, Delaunay was brought up by his uncle. He took an interest in painting at an early age, and despite the derisive attitude of his uncle towards modern art, he adopted an Impressionist style as a teenager. In 1906, military service took him to Laon, where he produced his first mature work. On his return to Paris in 1908, his painting took a new direction when he saw the Cubist paintings of Picasso and Braque. A series of paintings of cathedrals and the Eiffel Tower followed, in which he adopted the Cubist style, but with his own sense of vivid color and movement, creating tensions and harmonies through contrasting color planes. Delaunay's Orphism influenced Kandinsky's Der Blaue Reiter group, see page 408, and his use of the spectrum of colors to achieve brilliant effects was taken up by his wife Sonia, in her painting, fabric, and fashion design. It was a short step to completely non-representational paintings, which both Delaunays produced for the rest of their lives. The style celebrated technology and modern life, as opposed to the still life preferred by Picasso, Braque, and Gris. Lifeline. 1906 to 2008 serves as a regimental librarian in Laon. 1908 to 12 moves towards abstraction in what he calls his destructive period. 1910 marries fellow artist Sonia Turk. 1912 to -14 enters H.S. constructive period of virtually abstract painting. 1914 to 29 lives in Spain and Portugal. Returns to a figurative style. 1929 returns to France, and resumes abstract painting. 1940 moves to the Auvergne to avoid the Nazi invasion. Dies in Montpellier the following year. La Ville de Paris. Delaunay continued to aspire to make the big public painting that had been a feature of 19th-century academicism. Here, he brings together the Eiffel Tower, a symbol of modernity, with the three graces, derived from an antique fresco. 1910 to 12, oil on canvas, 267 by 406 centimeters, Pompidou Center, Paris. Closer look. Shards of color combining an impressionistic fascination for light with the fragmentary approach of Cubism. Delaunay reduces the elements of this scene to a collection of separate shards of color. The Eiffel Tower, one of a series of Cubist-inspired paintings of the Eiffel Tower. This shows Delaunay's preoccupation with composition rather than representation. He concentrates on juxtapositions of color and shape to achieve movement and tension. 1911, oil on canvas, 201 by 138 centimeters, Guggenheim Museum, New York, U.S. Windows open simultaneo, first part, third motif. By the of the simultaneous windows, Delaunay had virtually abandoned figurative painting. In this groundbreaking abstract work, he the elements of Cubism to extreme, using luminous colors and a prisma effect that disguises representation images beyond recognition. 1912, oil on canvas, 46 by 38 centimeters, Tate, London. In order that art attain the limit of sublimity, it must draw upon our harmonic vision, clarity. Robert Delaunay, 1912. In context. Apollinaire, the poet and writer Guillaume Apollinaire, also worked as an art critic and had many artist friends. He coined the term Orphism to describe the style of Delaunay and his followers after Orpheus, the poet and musician of Greek mythology. Portrait of Guillaume Apollinaire. Here an unknown French photographer captures Apollinaire reclining, c. 1910. Frantisek Kupka. Biapono, 1871. De Putos, Paris, 1957. After studying in his native Bohemia, and then in Prague and Vienna, Frantisek Kupka moved to Paris in 1895, where he made his name first as an illustrator, but later as an innovative abstract painter. Kupka's early paintings were in a symbolist style, making use of mythological and mythical imagery. But at the beginning of the 20th century he began to study color theory and the depiction of motion, combining these with his background in Czech folk art and an interest in science. By 1912, Kupka had evolved a unique vocabulary of shape and color, quite different from that of his Cubist contemporaries. In the purely abstract paintings that followed, he developed this compositional style, using vertical and diagonal strips of color or swirling circular forms. Kupka's work often contains allusions to science and music theory, as well as to his own theories on the conceptual nature of visual art. Kupka believed that abstract painting was analogous to musical composition, and strove to achieve harmony and rhythm in his work. Here, basic motifs are repeated, but also go through a process of development and transformation, like the unfolding of a piece of music. 1912, Oil on Canvas, 89 by 108 centimeters, Pompidou Center, Paris, France. Closer look. Colors in harmony. The shapes are rounded and have a sense of solidity, unlike the fragments of flat color favored by the Cubists. They are arranged in groups with colors from the same part of the spectrum. Mkhy Larionov, B. Tiraspol, 1881, D. Fontenay-aux Roses, near Paris, 1964. A maverick figure in the Russian avant-garde, Mikhail Larionov was a leading figure in a series of avant-garde groups of artists at the beginning of the 20th century, and the initiator of the style known as Rayonism. Starting in an impressionistic style while still a student in Moscow, Larionov was anxious to incorporate the latest Fauvist and Expressionist ideas into his work, and he was particularly attracted to Italian Futurism. From these, he developed a neo-primitivist style, in about 1912, and the first of his non-objective Rayonist paintings. He traveled with his long-term partner Natalya Goncharova to France, and became an important member of the École de Paris, as well known for his stage design and writings on art as for his painting. Rayonist composition. In Larionov's early Rayonist paintings, the subject was fragmented by the depiction of interesting rays of light reflected from it, but he soon moved towards a purer, more abstract interpretation. From about 1913, he produced non-objective compositions, such as this one, in which the reflected and refracted light entirely replaced any subject. 1916, Gouache on paper, 56 by 45 centimeters, private collection. Natalya Goncharova. B. Negativo, 1881, D. Paris, 1962. In the early years of the 20th century, Natalya Goncharova established herself as a leading member of the Russian neo-primitivist movement. She later adopted a more avant-garde approach, and with her long-term partner Mikhail Larionov, developed the principles of Rayonism. The two met at the Moscow School of Painting, Sculpture and Architecture, where Goncharova studied. Goncharova's early work was influenced by Russian folk art as well as French post-impressionism. In around 1910, however, she adopted elements of Futurism and Subfuturism into her paintings, joined the Der Blaue Reiter group, and gained an international reputation. As a designer for Diaghilev's Ballets Russes, Goncharova traveled around Europe, eventually settling in Paris in 1919 and becoming a French citizen in 1938. She and Larionov married in 1955. By this time, they were both in poor health and living in poverty, but she continued to paint until her death in 1962. The cyclist painted during the most productive period of her life. This is the best known of Goncharova's Russian futurist paintings. She uses splinter geometric shapes and repetitions to convey a sense of dynamic movement. 1913, Oil on Canvas, 78 by 105 centimeters, State Russian Museum, St. Petersburg, Russia. Peasants picking apples. Although Goncharova often worked at the cutting edge of the avant-garde, she continued to paint figurative scenes inspired by folk art. Her depictions of peasants at work show the influence of Lubach prints, simple, colorful prints from woodcuts or copper engravings, and medieval Russian statues, but also of Gauguin, Cézanne, and Matisse. 1911, Oil on Canvas, 104 by 98 centimeters, Tretyakov Gallery, Moscow, Russia.